despite what these videos may imply, I'm not a speed demon. Okay, so things are crazy at the shop right now, so I'm gonna do a ride video. We actually can't get in. Car hit a power pole in the middle of the night. So I rode this bike to the shop, so I figured I'd just do a video on it right now. So this is a 1976 CB550. Honda CB550, in case you get out by the big Honda on the side. It's a 4-cylinder, 550 cc's. 76 is the last year that they look like this with this paint scheme, and then they become slightly different, and then they stop entirely in 1978. But this is really the golden era of motorcycling, in my opinion, because in 76 Honda had just really gotten everything together. They had made enough bikes, everything works, everything's easy to repair, easy to work on, and let's take it for a ride around the loop. So like I said, I just taken it here, so it probably doesn't need even warmed up, but it has a choke and all that other stuff that you would see on an old bike like this with carburetors. Fired right up. So this, we're gonna see some construction craziness, and that's all because of our building. We got an alert last night that said the power was out like 1 a.m. or something. It's like, that's weird. And then I checked it like a half hour, an hour later. It was back on, and we have cameras in there and I could access them. And so I thought, okay, no big deal. We come in today and the pole's on the ground, and we'll see it here in a second. They got 3 cranes all at once. They're putting this pole back in. They said a car hit it in the middle of the night, so pretty wild. So I can't even get to there's the door. Can't even get in. So I thought, I'll just take this motorcycle around. It's one of the advantages of riding in today. Take it around our little loop. So these motorcycles came from the CB500 before that, so they added 50 cc's, basically just bigger cylinders, but this motorcycle is very, very similar to a CB500. Now this is a little confusing for people, but I am talking about the 4-cylinder. There actually was, for a brief period of time, a CB500T, which is a 2-cylinder, and that came from the CB450, which is a dual overhead cam, a completely different style engine, a much earlier design. Well, that guy definitely almost hit that car across the road. A little crazy. Now he crosses the double yellow line again. Okay. We're gonna have to keep on our toes around this guy. Anyway, so that's sort of the lineage of Honda engines, is that they are from the 450 twin, and then sometimes they're 350 twins, in other countries they're 250s, but we're talking about the 4-cylinder, 500, 550. Those are the ones that are clearly in the same family. If you have them right next to each other, we actually do have a 72 at the shop. You could tell that they're very similar motorcycles. The way you adjust the clutch is about the only difference on the outside that you can tell. And they'll of course say 500, say 550 on the side. And anyway, these came out in 74, maybe 73 now that I think about it. No, 74. And they were the 550 ever since, until 78, like I had mentioned earlier. They eventually have a Super Sport version. This is not that. This is what you would call the K model, or this just the standard model in Japanese. I think it's Kaizen, and that means like iteration or version. And it's kind of a weird like translation to English, but basically that was version 1, version 0, version 2, all that stuff. And so they just wind up calling like it comes from the 750, where they just called the standard model the K model. And then when they came out with the automatic and the Super Sport, they called them A for automatic and F for Super Sport. I know that sounds weird, but F means sport. Anyway, 550s also have a version of that. So they have a 550F. There is no 500F, but there's a 550F, which is a little bit sportier bike. It looks very similar if you kind of have never noticed the differences between the two, but the most obvious difference is the 4-into-1 exhaust. So all the 4 exhaust pipes come out this side and go along your right side. But commonly these 4-into-4 exhausts, like the ones that's on this one, will rust out, and people will replace them with a 4-into-1. That was like the sporty thing at the time. So anyway, people would do that, so you commonly, it's even harder to tell. These bikes, and just like the 354s, and the, did I give myself, I turned off the gas, so we made it that far with the gas off. It's kind of wild. Anyway, the 354s and the 400, I don't know, someone just honked at me? Anyway, so the 354s and the 400s are very similar to this engine, and those series of bikes, the 4-cylinder smaller displacement bikes, are famous for being smooth. We're talking about a very small piston, relatively, in a cylinder. Spread out among 4 cylinders, we have 550 cc's. So with 500, I can do the math easier, but it's 125 cc's or milliliters, depending on how you want to think about it. Very small amount of displacement. And so what that leaves, what that lends to the sort of engine characteristics is just buzzy. Think about it like a game controller with a vibrator device in it, where it just, you know, it's a high frequency vibration. It's not a thump, 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 thump. It's a high pitched, because you got a lot of cylinders just flying around in there. Well, anyway, you get more of a buzz, more of a hum than a thump or a rumble. And so that's the characteristic of these engines specifically, is just a smooth buzz. And they rev really high, especially for the era. You know, we're talking about 9,000 RPMs here. And that is pretty high for what they were capable of doing at the time. There's a lot that goes into why that would happen, bore and stroke and length of all that, but just note that we're talking about 9,000 RPMs. That was blowing some people's minds back then. Might pull over if this car is still going to be in the way here, even though he's a bit spirited. The brakes on this bike are pretty good. We're talking about a drum in the rear, but a disc up front. It's got a good sound though. I actually really like the 550. It's one of my favorite motorcycles. I'm gonna pull over here and just give this guy a chance to get ahead of me. Because it's similar to the 750, especially in power and sort of general size. It's a little smaller. If you have them next to each other, it kind of seems like not 3/4, but you know, 80% or something the size of a 750. A 750 feels much bigger. A 550, you lose a little bit of that size and the weight, but you don't lose a ton of the power, and that's the reason I really like it. I feel like you can get in these turns a lot better on a 500 or a 550 than you can on a 750, even though the 750 was sort of the performance bike of the time, at least for Honda. It's not as nimble. That just seems so nimble on those turns. And I got plenty of power here. It's not a fast bike, certainly by today's standards, but it's very fun. It's a great city bike. Like I was saying earlier, I think it's the perfect blend of size and power and performance. Despite what these videos may imply, I'm not a speed demon. I don't actually really want to go fast very often. I like the ability to do it if I have to, or getting on a freeway exit ramp or something, or like a little stretch here where I have a little bit of room. But I don't care. I don't care about doing burnouts and crazy stuff like that. You know, hence the whole vintage motorcycles thing. I want a perfectly running time machine of a motorcycle. That's what I want. I want this to be exactly how it was in 1976. If you would have bought this off the showroom floor, I want to know what that was like for the people of that time. And this bike is pretty close to that. It doesn't really have any changes. Something you may notice if you were around at that time, or you know about those bikes, is that these bikes would have had, in 1976, that square in the time period where they would have had a turn signal buzzer. So you turn on the turn signal. Right now it doesn't do anything, it doesn't click, and I'll leave it on occasionally. And this is the reason why. It's sort of a safety thing if you think about it. If I accidentally left my turn signal on, now here's how the turn signals work. You see I got my right turn signal on. If I don't do anything, that just stays on forever. I have to manually move it back to the middle. Some people that are used to Harleys, you've got a right side turn signal is on the right, the left side turn signal is on the left, and they self-cancel. So this is completely foreign to some people. And if you're only used to a car, then of course it's totally weird to not have self-canceling. But because of that, it was a safety thing, and so they added this beep, beep, beep. Every time it blinks, it would activate this just loud thing. It actually lives under here. And first thing I always do is disconnect them because I just think they're so annoying. Speaking of, it kind of looks like my brake light's disconnected. Let's fix that. Nice. Road repair. So on these 550s, and a lot of bikes in that area, we have a hydraulic front brake. You can see because of the reservoir here. And that was kind of an innovation around that time, kind of. Sometimes they have cable brakes. Sometimes they have these like mechanical disc brakes, drum brakes, of course, in the earlier bikes. But the way that rear light, their brake light actually works is from this switch down here, which is hydraulically activated, and then it makes a mechanical or an electrical switch light up. A little bit down the rabbit hole there, but anyway, that's how they work. But I love these motorcycles. We got two of these 550s. We have one 500. One that I sort of consider my personal bike. I repainted it metal flake green. It's obviously not this one. Speaking of paint, these are brown. They were all brown in 1976, the K models at least. The F model, the Super Sport model, came out in 75. I don't know what I'm doing there. I shifted down too far because I was talking. Anyway, the K model is, like I said, the standard model, and it's got the black graphic on the side and the gold. And so underneath, these are called candy garnet brown, and underneath the brown is green. And you know, candy, I don't know if you know about candy paint, but it's like translucent, like transparent kind of. And so what they do is, depending on how many layers you put on, you'll get a darker, richer color, and you'll hide the layers underneath. So they have a bit of a green underneath, and then the brown candy over top, and it gives it that color that you see. And what happens if they're left out in the sun at any period of time, or they weather poorly, that green comes through, the brown kind of fades, and the green comes through. So a lot of the times it kind of looks like someone like dropped green paint on top of the tanks, because the whole top will be green and then it'll go to brown where the sun wouldn't touch on the bottom or on the side. I'm gonna try to go in the side entrance here because I don't know how that front's gonna work with the power guys. Give us an extra chance to stop here and look at it. But anyway, these are about my favorite motorcycles to work on. They're just so simple. The carburetors, there's 4 of them, but they're put together in a very intuitive manner, and they just run. This one has 8,000 miles. I think I bought it for $800 or something from a guy that hadn't run a couple of years, and this guy's not going to help me out here. And all I did was clean the carbs, and it fires right up. So we're talking about pretty major, I don't know, neglect is fair, but a significant amount of time that it had been sitting, and some pretty minor work that needed done. But anyway, there you go. That's a 1976 CB550 around the loop. I hope that you liked this video, and I'll see you next time.